I was born into the sword. My first memory is not of a mother's embrace, but of the sting of bamboo against my skin. I was 5 years old when they placed a wooden blade in my hands and told me it was no toy, it was my life. From that day forward, my childhood was not my own. Other children ran through fields chasing dragonflies, their laughter carried by the summer wind. I watched them from a distance, my body bruised, my palms blistered, as I repeated strikes until the bamboo splintered in my hands. My father was not cruel, at least not in the way men think of cruelty. He was a samurai. He believed the blade was a blessing and a burden, and to train me with mercy would be to condemn me with weakness. His eyes were sharp as steel. When I faltered, he did not strike me in anger, but with duty. Every blow was a lesson. Pain was the only true teacher. At night, when the world grew quiet, I would lie awake, listening to the whetstone against steel. The sound was endless, scraping through the silence like a reminder that even in rest, the sword waited. My mother would sit by the fire, her hands weaving cloth, her face lined with a sorrow she never spoke aloud. She knew what my path would be, as all samurai wives did. Her son was not her own. He belonged to the code, to the clan, to the endless cycle of duty and death. When I turned 7, they cut my hair in the style of a warrior. It was a ritual that severed more than strands. It severed innocence. From then on, I was no longer seen as a child, but as a blade in the making. The elders recited the words of Bushido: loyalty, honor, courage. But what they did not say, what I learned in silence, was that these words were chains. They bound us tighter than iron shackles, tighter than blood ties. We were not allowed to live for ourselves. We lived for our lords. We died for them too. The first time I saw death, I was 9. A man accused of betrayal was brought before the clan. He was not given trial, only a blade. I watched as he knelt, his hands trembling, and with one swift motion he opened his belly. His scream was short, strangled. His body fell forward, and the ground drank his blood like rain. My father placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "This is honor." My stomach churned, my eyes burned, but I said nothing. To speak would have been shameful. To feel would have been weakness. That night I dreamed of his face, and for the first time I realized what my future would be. My life was already marching toward the blade. As I grew, training consumed me. Sword drills at dawn, archery at noon, horseback in the evening. My body hardened, but my heart grew numb. Friends were not companions. They were rivals. To laugh too freely, to speak too much, was dangerous. A samurai was expected to hold silence like a weapon, and so I learned to swallow words, to bury feelings, to let my eyes speak only when my mouth could not. But still, I was human. There were moments when I longed for freedom. At 16, I stood beneath the cherry blossoms, petals falling like soft snow. For a moment, I felt beauty, fragile and fleeting. Yet my master's voice cut through the stillness. Remember, beauty fades, only honor endures. I wanted to ask, what is honor if it steals every joy from living? But I did not speak. My tongue remained behind its cage of teeth. That was the way of survival. The first battle came before I turned 18. Armor heavy, blade shaking in my hands, I stood in a sea of men, each of us pretending to be fearless. When the horn sounded, we charged, and the world erupted into chaos. Steel clashed, flesh split, screams drowned beneath the roar of war. I struck again and again, until I no longer knew whose blood stained my blade, mine or theirs. When the battle ended, The ground was littered with bodies. I remember stepping over the face of a boy no older than me, his eyes still wide with terror, his lips parted as if to cry out for his mother. He was no enemy. He was me, reflected in death. That night I did not sleep. My hands trembled, though I held them still in front of my master. To tremble was dishonor. To weep was betrayal. So I swallowed the fear, burying it deep where no one could see. People think the life of a samurai was glory. They imagine honor shining brighter than blood, duty sweeter than freedom. But I tell you this, honor tastes like iron, bitter and cold. Duty smells like smoke and rot. And beneath the silence we wore like armor, every one of us knew the truth. We were men carved into statues, denied the softness of humanity, chained to a path that ended always in death. I did not live a childhood. I was forged. And what was forged in me was not life, but a blade. And blades do not weep. They only cut until they are broken. I became a man beneath the shadow of war. By the time I was 20, I had seen more blood spilled than most men do in a lifetime. And yet, I was expected to remain unshaken. A samurai does not falter. A samurai does not question. A samurai carries his lord's will as though it were his own, even when it tastes of ash. That was the creed drilled into my bones. But in the silence of my heart, I wondered, if my life is not my own, then what am I? My first true battle came during a feud between rival clans. The banners of my lord snapped in the wind, crimson against the gray sky, as we marched into the valley. I remember the smell first. Sweat, leather, horse breath, fear hidden beneath discipline. I tried to steady my hands as I tied the hilt of my katana, but the tremor would not leave me. Around me, men laughed nervously, muttering prayers, as if pretending they were ready for death would keep it at bay. When the horns blew, the earth shook with the thunder of feet. Arrows blackened the sky, a rain of death descending. The first man I killed was no older than me. His eyes were wild, his blade clumsy. I struck because he struck, and when he fell, blood bubbling from his mouth, I stared at him as though looking into a mirror cracked with red. His life ended in my hands, and yet the earth did not stop. The sky did not weep. Only silence lingered for a breath. Then the world roared again. They called the battle a victory. But when the night came, when the torches burned low, I could still hear his choking gasp. I did not sleep. I stared into the flames until my eyes burned, praying that the visions would fade. They never did. From that day, every man I killed came with me into the night, whispering in my dreams, tugging at my sleeve in silence. Still, I fought. Still, I obeyed. What else could I do? To hesitate was dishonor. To refuse was betrayal. So I drowned the whispers in sake, in endless drills, in the sound of the whetstone grinding steel. My master praised me for my discipline, my silence, my unwavering blade. He did not know that silence was not strength, but fear. Fear that if I spoke, if I let the truth escape my lips, the entire mask of my life would shatter. Duty bound me tighter with each passing year. I saw lords command men to die, not for necessity, but for pride. I watched warriors sacrifice themselves in Seppuku, their insides spilling before cheering crowds, all because honor demanded it. Once, my lord ordered the execution of a man accused of cowardice. I knew the man. I had fought beside him. He was no coward, only human, trembling before overwhelming odds. Yet my hand was chosen to deliver the strike. I cut him down in front of his wife and son. The boy's eyes bore into mine, not with fear, but with hatred. I carried that gaze with me, heavier than any armor. The world praises samurai loyalty. They call it noble. But I tell you, loyalty is a blade with two edges. It cuts the enemy, yes, but it also cuts the one who wields it. I learned this when my lord betrayed his own ally. Without hesitation, he commanded us to storm the allies' fortress, to slaughter those who had once fought at our side. I obeyed, because to disobey was to invite death. That night, as I wiped blood from my sword, I wondered, was this honor or treachery sanctified by a stronger hand? My silence made me complicit. My silence made me guilty. But silence was all I had left. There were moments of quiet, brief, fragile reprieves from the endless march of duty. A spring festival where lanterns floated across the river like stars made flesh. A fleeting smile from a woman I was forbidden to marry, her eyes holding warmth my blade could never know. But even in those moments, duty loomed. I could not reach for her hand. I could not follow the lanterns into the night. My life was not mine. It belonged to the code, to the clan, to the blade. As I aged, my body hardened, but my soul hollowed. They said I was a fine samurai, unflinching, devoted, unbreakable. But inside, I was already broken. Each life I took carved away another piece of me. Each order obeyed without question drained what little humanity remained. They saw a warrior. I saw a shadow wearing flesh. I remember one autumn evening, after another battle, standing in the field of corpses. The wind blew cold, carrying the scent of blood and smoke. My armor was heavy with mud and gore. I looked at the horizon, at the sun dying in flames, and I thought, is this all we are? Men sent to die, to kill, to vanish into the soil, while our lords sit in their palaces, counting victories we paid for with our souls. That thought nearly consumed me, but I buried it, like all the others. For a samurai who questions is no samurai at all. This was my adulthood, an endless march between obedience and silence, between killing and surviving, between duty and the slow erosion of the self. My blade grew sharper. My spirit grew duller. They called it honor. I called it a prison, and yet I remained. Because where else could I go? To walk away was to become a ronin, despised, hunted, stripped of purpose. Better to die a prisoner of honor than to live as an exile without it. That is what they told us. That is what I told myself. Now, as I recall those years, I see them for what they were. Not the flowering of manhood, but its burial. I was not living. I was serving a death sentence, stretched out across decades, waiting only for the final command. They say a man breaks all at once, like a blade snapping under too much force. I did not. I bent, quietly, invisibly, until one day the curve became a crack, and the crack became a choice. It began with an order I could not carry. We were to cleanse a village accused of harboring rebels. I rode in at dawn with my unit, armor creaking, banners wet with mist. The houses were small, the fields thin, the people thinner. An old man stepped forward with rice in his hands, an offering to show peace. My captain told me to strike him first, to teach the rest. My fingers tightened on the hilt, but my feet would not move. The old man's eyes were clouded milk, yet he saw me clearly. In that cloudy gaze, I recognized my father, my future, my own hunger. I lowered the blade. The captain struck the man down himself, then turned to me. "You will finish the rest," he said. I did not. I gathered the villagers into the shrine and barred the doors from the outside, pretending to search the fields while time crawled past like wounded insects. When we left, the captain praised our speed. No one counted the dead, no one counted the spared. But rumor travels faster than horses. By the time we returned to the fortress, my hesitation had a shape and a name. They summoned me at night. Lanterns bled their light across the floor like open wounds. My lord sat straight-backed, a scroll of accusations before him, my captain breathing hot through his nose like a tethered bull. I knelt. They asked if I had hesitated. I told the truth. Yes. The room went cold. To hesitate in duty is to confess another loyalty, one that the code does not recognize. The sentence was not spoken, only written. A brush scratching the paper, then the paper set beside me with the quiet weight of fate. Seppuku at dawn, a voluntary end to polish the stain of reluctance into the mirror of honor. I did not sleep. I found my mentor in the training yard, an old man whose hands shook only when they were not holding a sword. He listened while I recited the sentence as if it belonged to another man. "You will do it," he said, "or you will become something worse than dead." He paused, then added almost kindly, "If your heart is loud enough to make your hand tremble, it is already too loud for this house." I bowed to him the final time and walked toward my chamber. Somewhere between the yard and the door, my feet turned instead toward the stables. A horse does not know the difference between loyalty and flight. It knows the pressure of knees, the taste of reins, the smell of fear. We left before the moon could ask a question. A samurai without a master is a blade without a scabbard. Dangerous to himself first. The first weeks were hunger and silence. I hid my crest, bound my hair like a peasant, slept under bridges where the river speaks a language only the broken understand. The sword at my hip attracted eyes I did not want. Some looked with pity that felt like stones. Others looked with calculation. The word Ronin rode the wind ahead of me. That insult disguised as a category, a wave man, a drift man, a man whose oar has snapped and whose boat spins slowly under a sky that has forgotten his name. Work finds a man who has a weapon and a face willing to become stone. I guarded sake storehouses for merchants who bowed too low and paid just enough to keep me dangerous. Drunks tried their luck. I sent them to sleep without dreams. Thieves came hungry. I sent them back to their mothers if they had one, or to the ditch if they did not. Nobody asked where I learned to cut so clean. Nobody asked why I would not drink the sake I protected. At night, coin clinked like teeth in my pouch, and the river under the bridge applauded without warmth. There is a quiet line a man crosses without hearing it. One evening, a magistrate's servant waited for me at a noodle stall, his sleeves too clean for that neighborhood. He spoke of a troublemaker who wrote poems that made other men's backs straighter and their heads less willing to bow. He spoke of the necessity of order, the price of peace. He did not speak the word kill, but he set it on the table between the bowls like another dish. The payment would carry me through winter. I told myself it was not assassination. It was pruning, the sort a gardener does when a branch grows toward a neighbor's roof. I followed the poet through rain to a tea house, then from the tea house into a narrow street where the lanterns were too thin to hold back the dark. He turned when he heard my steps and smiled, as if he had been waiting for a friend. His mouth formed a greeting that became a sigh. I held him while he bled because there was no one else to do it. He thanked me for not letting him fall in the mud. I did not sleep for 9 nights after that, and on the 10th, I slept like stone. This is how men become what they swore to hate. Not with a leap, but with a series of bows to necessity. I fell in with other wanderers. We wore our swords like apologies and shared rice without asking names. At dusk, we told jokes that sour men tell, laughter peeling off our faces in brittle strips. One among us, a giant with eyes like puddles, spoke of revenge, as if it were water he had been saving on his tongue for years. Another, a boy no older than I had been in my first battle, watched our hands like a child studying a priest's rituals. He asked me to teach him the cut that does not catch in ribs. I taught him the opposite, how to bow without breaking your neck. He thought it was a trick. Perhaps it was, once each month. Something inside me tried to crawl back to its old nest. I would climb the hill above my former lord's lands and stare at the roofs that used to shelter my sleep. Lanterns moved in those rooms like ghosts who had found work again. I saw my mentor once in the yard, a small figure instructing boys whose fists were stones, waiting for sling and sky. He did not look up. The wind brought me the smell of oiled wood and discipline. I watched until my eyes dried. Then I walked down the hill and bought the cheapest rice, tasting in each grain the simple miracle of not being seen. The road is a teacher crueler than any master. It teaches you how easily a man becomes an animal when nobody calls him by name. I learned to move like a shadow that distrusts its source. I learned which dogs will bite and which will simply warn the night that I am coming. I learned that mercy is a luxury a man must pay for later, with interest. Once, a thief lunged at me, shaking as if his bones rattled under his skin. I cut his sleeve, not his arm, then fed him the rest of my rice. He wept, as if I had struck him. I woke the next morning with my purse gone, and my sword still at my side. He had known the line better than I. Letters find even men who have no address. One came folded inside another man's request. If I would loosen a certain knot in the fabric of a certain castle's politics, an old stain on my record might be washed a shade lighter. The knot had a face, I knew. My former captain, now promoted for his eagerness where mine had failed. I stared at the paper until the ink seemed to move like ants. A pardon is a rope thrown toward a drowning man. Sometimes it is only seaweed prayed into a shape. I did not accept, and I did not refuse. I took the letter to the river and read it aloud to the current. The current has no counsel for men. It lifted the paper from my hand and made it into a small, pale fish that swam away from me faster than the boy I used to be. I began to dream of women whose faces I had never seen. In the dreams, they poured tea and did not look at my hands. In waking life, a woman at a roadside shrine tied a strip of cloth to my wrist and told me not to untie it until the gods had decided who I was. I asked how long that took. She smiled in a way that made time apologize. "Sometimes a life," she said. I wore the cloth until rain turned it into mud, and the mud fell away during a fight behind a gambling house. The gods prefer their jokes to arrive on time. Winter was a long corridor where every door was locked. I sold the short sword my father had given me and kept the long blade. A man must choose which half of inheritance he can afford to carry. Hunger sharpened my senses until I could hear a coin change its mind from across a room. I took work guiding a caravan through a valley where bandits claimed taxes with bows. When the bandits came, they were boys with sticks tipped in rust. I slapped their arrows from the air and shouted that if they were going to steal, they should at least not be boring. They ran, laughing in a way that made me feel older than my armor. Later that night, the merchant thanked me with sake I did not drink. He told me I had the eyes of a priest on the day after a funeral. I told him priests at least know which gods they offend. There was one more fall, quieter than the rest, and therefore deeper. The boy from our little band, the one who studied hands, returned to me on a gray morning with a grin that made him look suddenly young. He had found steady work, he said, as a guard for a rich farmer who feared tax collectors more than thieves. The pay is fair, he told me, and the daughter of the house looks at me as if my name were a future. I put my hand on his shoulder and tried to remember how to say blessings without lying. A week later, I found his body in a ditch 2 towns away, his throat opened cleanly by someone who had learned to cut on men, not straw. His purse was still there. The only thing missing was his grin. I sat in the ditch until the stars came, and the road forgot to be a road. I did not bury him with words. The earth takes men without needing poetry. I stole a single hair ribbon tangled in his sleeve and tied it to my wrist where the shrine cloth had been. It did not change who I was. It changed what I could no longer pretend not to be. I have said little of love because love has said little of me. There was once a woman who sold paper lanterns with fireflies painted so carefully they seemed to move even before the candle was lit. She asked if my sword was heavy. I told her it weighed less than the things I could not put down. She laughed, the sound brisk as winter laundry. We shared a bowl of noodles while Rain performed rehearsals on the roof. I left before dawn because leaving is a habit that spares a man the terror of being asked to stay. I kept one of her lanterns unlit, rolled inside my bedding like a possible moon. If there is a lesson in the fall, it is not about gravity, but about the ground. You discover what shape you have when you meet what cannot move. I had been a weapon others held. Now I was a weapon I held against myself. Each job I took cut a thread that had once tied me to a name, a house, a code. I told myself I would stop after the next winter, the next debt, the next apology to the mirror. The road nodded, a patient liar. I know where this leads. A man who has fled dawn once will eventually be asked to meet it again with a blade and a square of white cloth. But the road is not finished with me yet. Somewhere ahead is a gate, and behind the gate, a room with tatami that smells like memory, and in the room a blade that recognizes the hand that first learned to hold it without shaking. I am not ready to bow to that room. Not yet. The river still speaks. The lantern is still unlit. The ribbon still knots my wrist with the gentlest of shackles. For now, I walk. For now, I listen to my footsteps make a story out of dirt. For now, I am a man whose shadow keeps pace, which is more mercy than many receive. But hear me, the fall did not make me monstrous. It only stripped away the costumes in which I had been taught to bow. I was always this man, hungry for a rule that did not require me to devour myself, thirsty for a loyalty that did not taste like iron. Call me Ronin if you must. I am a wave still looking for a shore that will not order me to erase what the sea has written in me. If I cannot find it, then I will become my own shore and let the tide decide whether to leave me clean or drown me, finally, mercifully, in something larger than duty. They call us warriors of honor, yet I have learned that honor is nothing but a knife turned inward. It cuts you from the inside, and still you bow your head, refusing to scream. I was 19 when I killed for the first time. My hands were steady, my blade true, but my soul trembled as though the earth beneath me was breaking apart. The boy I struck down could not have been older than myself. His eyes widened, not in rage, but in disbelief, as though he had not expected death to come so soon. Even now, decades later, Those eyes return in my sleep. They follow me into silence, into the stillness of night, into the moments when I look at my own reflection on the blade and see his ghost instead of my face. But I learned quickly, hesitation is weakness, and weakness is death. The battlefield has no place for pity. The screams, the blood, the stench of burning flesh, all of it becomes background noise, like the hum of cicadas in summer. At first I gagged. Later I could eat rice with one hand, while wiping blood from my face with the other. We told ourselves it was for our Lord, for loyalty, for the way of Bushido. But deep within, I knew it was not loyalty that carried my sword arm. It was fear. Fear of being branded a coward, fear of failing the clan, fear of being discarded like a broken weapon. And so, I killed again and again, until fear itself became my master. The life of a samurai was not only battles. There were rituals, ceremonies, the endless bowing and kneeling before men whose hands had never touched steel. We were tools, sharpened and polished, admired for our edge, but never allowed to be more than extensions of another man's will. My lord was ambitious, and ambition is a hunger that devours everything it touches. We bled to fill his cup. We died to expand his borders. And when he was betrayed by a fellow daimyo, we, his samurai, bore the shame. I watched men who had fought beside me for years take their own lives in silence, their blood soaking into tatami mats, while the elders nodded as though justice had been served. Seppuku. The word itself tastes like iron. I remember the first time I witnessed it. A comrade accused of failure. Failure not of his own making, but of his master's greed. He bowed to us, thanked us for our brotherhood, and then sank the blade into his stomach. His face twisted, his body convulsed, but he did not scream. A second struck his neck, severing his head in one clean stroke. His widow wailed like a wounded animal, but no one comforted her. We simply bowed again as if this was virtue, as if this was justice. I was told this was the highest form of honor. I wondered silently, how could a man's honor be found in tearing himself apart while others watched? As the years passed, I became less a man and more a shadow in armor. My body bore scars, some visible, others buried deep where no one could see. I learned to bury grief beneath ritual. I learned to drink sake until the room spun and the ghosts blurred. I learned to write poems by candlelight, delicate verses about cherry blossoms and fleeting spring, even as the smell of blood clung to my hair. This contradiction was the heart of a samurai. The sword in one hand, the brush in the other, death and beauty bound together in an endless knot. But the brush was a lie. The poems I wrote were not for beauty, but for survival. If I could dress my pain in words, perhaps I could convince myself it had meaning. Not all of us died on the battlefield. Some were cast aside, stripped of our master's favor, forced to wander as ronin. I watched friends become bandits, their armor pawned for a loaf of bread, their honor traded for survival. I swore it would never be me, but honor does not fill an empty stomach. There were nights when I too stared at the edge of my blade and wondered if life itself was a betrayal. The ronin are ghosts, neither alive nor dead, neither warrior nor peasant. In truth, every samurai fears this fate more than death. To die is at least to be remembered. To live without a master is to vanish slowly, eaten alive by shame. I was not spared from betrayal. My lord, for whom I had killed and bled, for whom I had buried my soul, was accused of treachery. Whether he was guilty or not, I never knew. but the sentence was clear. His household dissolved, his warriors scattered. We, who had served faithfully, became tainted by his fall. My comrades knelt, one by one, disemboweling themselves to preserve the illusion of honor. I alone refused, not out of courage, but because something inside me had already died. I was no longer afraid of dishonor. I was no longer afraid of shame. I had already lived as a corpse. Death could not frighten me more than life had. Yet refusal is its own form of punishment. I wandered, nameless, my armor rusting, my blade dull. Children pointed and called me Ronin. Farmers spat at my feet. I, who had once stood among armies, now begged for food like a stray dog, and still I could not die. Perhaps that is the cruelest fate of all, to outlive your purpose, to carry memories that rot inside you, to know that the world has moved on while you remain shackled to ghosts. There is no glory in the life of a samurai. Only silence, only shadows, only the weight of a code that promises honor but delivers emptiness. I have seen the sun rise over countless battlefields, its beauty marred by corpses that once dreamed of home. I have seen cherry blossoms fall upon graves, their petals indistinguishable from drops of blood. And I have learned that the true enemy was never the man across the battlefield. It was the code itself. It was the honor we worshipped, the loyalty we chained ourselves to, the duty that hollowed us out until nothing remained. Now I sit alone, my blade beside me, the ghosts crowding the room. I am told the only way to reclaim my place in the afterlife is to spill my own blood, to end this story, as all samurai must. And yet I hesitate, for if life has been nothing but death in slow motion, then perhaps refusing death is my only act of rebellion. Perhaps the truest form of honor is to deny the lie entirely. So I wait, my hand resting on the hilt, torn between silence and defiance. Perhaps tomorrow I will cut. Perhaps tomorrow I will finally bow to the code. Or perhaps tomorrow I will rise once more, broken but alive, carrying a truth darker than any blade. That the life of a samurai was never about honor. It was about survival in a world that demanded our deaths long before our bodies fell. When I look back upon the path of my life, it feels less like a journey and more like a chain dragging me across a wasteland, each link forged from blood, duty, and silence. From childhood to manhood, from battlefield to wandering exile, every step was taken not by my will, but by the invisible hands of a code I did not write. Bushido, they called it, the way of the warrior. But I have lived long enough to see it for what it truly was. A cage built from honor, where freedom was an illusion, and where the highest reward for loyalty was often death by one's own hand. And now, as the twilight of my years closes in, I feel the weight of that cage heavier than ever. I live in a small hut on the edge of a village that does not remember my name. To them, I am simply an old Ronin, a relic from an age of steel and blood that has long since rusted. Children no longer fear me. They laugh at the clumsy gait of my aging legs, at the way I wince when winter bites into my bones. Farmers pass by without bowing, for I am no longer a samurai, no longer a man worth bowing to. My blade rests by the wall, its edge dulled, its once gleaming surface spotted with corrosion. Sometimes I wonder if the sword sighs in its sleep, mourning the days when it drank blood under the rising sun. The world has changed. Lords rise and fall, shoguns grasp for power, peasants whisper of freedom, and I, once bound to the heartbeat of history, am nothing more than a shadow. I used to believe that dying in service was the greatest destiny. But when I refused seppuku after my lord's fall, I unknowingly condemned myself to a slower, more brutal death, that of living on with no purpose, carrying scars the world no longer honors. My body is alive, but my spirit is ash. There are nights when I sit by the dim light of a lantern and hear the ghosts whispering around me. They call my name. Those men who once fought beside me, who once laughed in the barracks, who once wept in silence before thrusting steel into their own stomachs. They ask me why I am still here, why I linger in a world that has already buried us. I have no answer for them. Perhaps I am afraid, not of death, but of dying as they died, believing until the final breath in a lie that devoured us all. In the village they say I am cursed. They whisper that I am a samurai who defied the code, and so the gods abandoned me. They are not wrong. When I kneel before the shrine and try to pray, no words come. The incense burns, but its smoke carries nothing upward. The gods do not answer. Perhaps they turned away long ago when I chose life over honor. Or perhaps the gods were never listening, and we were fools to believe they cared. Sometimes I remember the boy I once was, the boy who trained with wooden swords under the cherry trees, who dreamed of glory, who believed that loyalty would carve his name into eternity. That boy still lives inside me, but he is caged, broken, and silent. He stares at me from the reflection of the blade, his eyes filled with questions I cannot bear to answer. What was it all for? Did the blood I spilled change anything? Did the loyalty I carried to the grave of my lord save a single soul? Or was I nothing more than a pawn, forgotten the moment I ceased to serve? The truth is cruel. A samurai's life was never his own. From birth, we were owned, by clan, by lord, by code. Even in death, we were not free. Seppuku was not liberation. It was the final chain, the last demand of a life lived for others. And yet, as I sit here in silence, I know the chain is still around my neck. Even in old age, even in disgrace, I feel its pull. There are nights when I dream of kneeling on the tatami mat, blade poised against my stomach, my second standing ready to sever my head in one swift motion. I wake drenched in sweat, my hands trembling as though the act had been real. The code will not let me go. But perhaps this is my rebellion, to refuse until the end, to live on, carrying the unbearable weight, until death comes for me in its own time, not by ritual, not by command, but by the quiet decay of the body. If honor is truly everything, then let me be dishonor itself, alive long enough to expose the emptiness of the code. Let me be the scar that cannot be erased, the shame that outlives the clan, the ghost that refuses to kneel. The villagers laugh when they see me stumble through the muddy streets, carrying rice on my bent back. They see only an old man. They do not see the wars in my head, the endless parade of corpses, the fire that once raged inside me, but now flickers faintly in the hollow of my chest. They do not see that every breath I take is an act of defiance. They do not know that behind these tired eyes lives a truth darker than any blade, that the life of a samurai was not glorious, but tragic, a cycle of obedience, sacrifice, and death, masked by the lie of honor. As I sit tonight, the moon cold and distant above the thatched roof, I feel the end approaching. My hands are weak, my heart slow, my body heavy. But I will not kneel. I will not cut. If the code demands blood, it will have to wait until death takes it from me naturally. Let the world say I was dishonored. Let the ancestors turn their faces away. I will leave this life on my own terms, silent but unbroken. For perhaps in the end, that is the only honor left to me, the honor of defiance. I can feel the weight of time pressing upon me Like an invisible armor I can no longer remove. Every joint creaks. Every step feels like it carries not only my body, but also the ghosts of all those who marched with me in battles long past. My nights are no longer silent. My dreams bleed into my waking hours, and I see faces I once cut down staring back at me in the shadows of this hut. They do not speak, these ghosts, but their eyes accuse me more fiercely than any judge or lord ever could. I used to believe we fought for justice, that our blades were instruments of order, cutting away chaos from the world, that the peasants needed us, that the lords guided us, that the emperor himself was the divine thread holding our fates together. But age has stripped away that illusion, like rust peeling from a blade. We fought not for justice, but for power, power that was never ours to hold. We were weapons, nothing more, and when a weapon becomes dull, it is discarded. I am that discarded blade, left to rot in silence, clinging to a life I no longer understand. Yet the cruelest truth is this: I miss it. I miss the roar of battle, the clash of steel, the burn in my chest when I charged into the fray. I miss the certainty, the simplicity of knowing that I had a place, a role, a purpose. Now, every day is a battlefield with no enemy, and I find myself longing for the clarity of death at the edge of a sword. There is a poison in that longing, I know. But when one has lived as a samurai, the quiet life is not peace. It is punishment. The villagers cannot know this. To them, war is a curse, something to be endured when lords summon them as conscripts. But to me, war was life itself. Without it, I am a hollow shell, a blade without a wielder. And in that emptiness grows bitterness, shame, and regret. For I see now that my life was wasted in service to men who cared nothing for me. They raised cups of sake to celebrate victories I bought with my blood, and when I was broken, they turned their eyes to the next young man willing to die for their honor. One day, a young boy from the village approached me. He had heard stories, myths, no doubt exaggerated, of my battles, my duels, my loyalty. He asked me to teach him the way of the sword. I looked into his eyes, wide with the same fire that once burned in mine, and I felt a stab deeper than any blade had ever given me. I wanted to tell him the truth, that the way of the samurai was not glory, but chains, that the sword was not freedom, but slavery, that every cut would carve away a piece of his soul until nothing remained. But when I opened my mouth, no words came, only silence, and in that silence the boy bowed, disappointed, and left me alone with my failure. I could not save him from the path that had destroyed me. I sometimes wonder if that is the curse of our kind, not the battles, not the deaths, not even the rituals of Seppuku, but the cycle, each generation feeding the next into the furnace of war, each boy dreaming of honor only to find despair, each old man left alone with regrets he cannot voice. We were bound not only by lords and codes, but by silence, a silence so heavy it suffocates us even in our final years. As my strength wanes, I prepare for the inevitable, not seppuku, not the staged ceremonial ending my kind worshipped, but the quiet slipping away of breath in the darkness. I imagine it often, my body cold, my sword rusting by my side, my name already forgotten by the world, and yet there is a strange comfort in this. Perhaps in death, I will finally be free of the chains. Perhaps my spirit will wander fields unmarked by war, rivers unstained by blood. Perhaps the boy I once was will greet me there, smiling, unbroken by the weight of duty. But before that moment comes, I write these words in my mind, if not on paper. I want the world to know what a samurai truly was, not the myths sung by poets, not the statues carved by lords, but the truth. We were men bound to an endless cycle of obedience, sacrifice, and silence. Our lives were not our own, our deaths not chosen freely. And though the world calls it honor, I call it tragedy. So when you hear the word samurai, do not picture the noble warrior standing tall beneath the cherry blossoms, his armor gleaming in the sun. Picture instead an old man like me, alone in a hut, haunted by the past, broken by duty, longing for freedom that never came. That is the true life of a samurai. And now, as the lantern burns low and the night deepens, I close my eyes and wait. Whether gods come for me, or only the emptiness of the void, I no longer care. Let them call me dishonored. Let them forget my name. In this final silence, I am finally mine. The lantern flickers. Shadows stretch long across the wooden walls, and in the silence of my final nights, memory claws its way back with sharper teeth than hunger ever had. It drags me away from this frail old body and throws me once more into the armor of my youth. I see myself, not as I am now, but as the boy who first tightened the grip on a sword, whose heart pounded with both fear and awe at the weight of steel in his hand. I remember the first time I killed. The clash was brief, the faces a blur, and then suddenly it was only him and me, two boys thrown into the furnace of men's wars. He was no older than I, his eyes wide, not with rage, but terror. I swung because they told me to, because my lord demanded it, because to hesitate meant death. When the blade bit into his flesh, when his scream pierced my ears, when the warm spray hit my face, I thought I would collapse. My body shook, my stomach churned, and yet, when the commander's voice roared approval, when the older warriors nodded at me, I swallowed the sickness and stood taller. That was the beginning of my corruption, not the killing itself, but the acceptance. The battles grew bloodier, the years heavier. I learned to strike without hesitation, to silence the cries of mercy before they could unmake me. I told myself I was strong, that I was honorable, that I was walking the path of Bushido. But in truth, I was burying the boy who once hesitated. Each kill was a shovel of dirt thrown upon his grave, until only the hardened mask of a samurai remained. There were moments that haunt me still. A peasant rebellion, starving men with nothing but farm tools, rising against our lord's taxes. They did not fight with skill. They fought with desperation, and we crushed them. I remember the smell of burning huts, the screams of women begging for their children's lives, the way the flames painted the sky in orange and black. My sword cut through not warriors, but fathers, sons, men who had nothing but their anger, and yet we called it justice. Justice. That word still tastes like ashes. We dressed our cruelty in noble robes, and the world believed us. But I know better. I was there. My hands were the instruments of their suffering. Not all memories are of faceless enemies. There was a man, older than me by decades, a Ronin who crossed my path during one long winter campaign. We fought in the snow, his strikes slow but deliberate, the movements of someone who had once been great, but whose body had betrayed him. I disarmed him, knocked him to the ground. He did not beg. He only looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Do it quickly." I did, but I carry his face still, because in that moment I saw myself, what I would become, what I am now, a relic of another man's story, left to die in silence. Sometimes I wonder if we samurai were truly warriors at all. A warrior fights for survival, for family, for something real. We fought for banners, for names carved in castles, for lords who would forget us before our ashes cooled. We convinced ourselves we were protectors of order, but we were only predators with permission. And the cruelest twist is that we believed it was noble. As I drift between wakefulness and sleep, I see them. The boy I killed first, the peasants who burned, the ronin in the snow. They do not scream anymore. They simply stand, watching me, waiting. I wonder if they are waiting to drag me into the same darkness that claimed them. Or perhaps they wait only for me to admit it, that my life was not honorable, not glorious, but a chain of sins too long to count. If there is any truth left in me, it is this. A samurai's life is not one of honor, but of silence. We kill and call it duty. We suffer and call it loyalty. We die and call it glory. But beneath it all, we are only men, frightened, broken, desperate to be remembered as more than what we truly were. Now, as my body weakens further, I no longer fear death. I fear only that history will paint us as heroes, as noble guardians of a beautiful code, that the poets will erase the blood, that the statues will hide the screams, that the world will never know the truth of the lives we lived. If my words carry beyond my breath, let them be this. We were not legends. We were not gods of war. We were men drowning in blood, chained to masters, and abandoned in silence. And perhaps, when the last light fades, I will finally lay down the sword I never chose to carry. Perhaps the boy I once was will forgive me. Perhaps the ghosts will fall silent, or perhaps not. The night grows colder, and with each breath I feel the weight of years pressing harder against my chest. The sword at my side has long been sheathed, its blade rusting as much as my bones, but its presence is a reminder. I was never free of it. A samurai is forged by steel, bound by it, and in the end, buried by it. Yet when I think of my life, the sharpest pain does not come from the enemies I killed, but from the ones I loved and lost because of the path I was forced to walk. I remember my father, himself a samurai of our clan. He was not a kind man, but he was steady, unbending like a pine tree in winter. He taught me discipline, taught me never to cry, never to question, never to dream of a life beyond the blade. "Your lord is your life," he said, "and your honor is your death." He believed it, lived by it, and died by it. When I was barely a man, he was cut down in service to our master, and his body was returned to us wrapped in white cloth. There were no tears at his funeral. At least, none were shown. I bowed. I held my face still, but inside I wanted to scream. I wanted to curse the world that stole him from me, but instead I swore to follow him. That is how the cycle continued. Sons burying fathers, only to step willingly onto the same road to ruin. Then there was my mother. Her hands were worn from work, her voice soft as rain. She never told me she loved me, not with words, but with silence, with the way she pressed her hand to my shoulder when I left for war. The last time I saw her, she stood in the doorway of our house, eyes red, though she pretended otherwise. I thought I would return soon. I thought there would be time. But when I finally came back years later, all that remained was a stone with her name carved upon it. She had died alone, her son fighting battles that had nothing to do with her life. I bowed before her grave, but no bow could wash away the guilt that I was not there. I never held her hand at the end. I never said goodbye. That is the cruelty of our code. It makes orphans of the living long before death arrives. And then, her. She was not my wife, not bound to me by family or clan, but she was the closest I ever came to happiness. a woman who saw the man beneath the armor, who laughed at the stiffness of my ways, who dared to ask me what I wanted, rather than what I was commanded to do. For a time, she was my secret rebellion against the cold iron of Bushido. But secrets do not survive in the world of samurai. My lord found out, and he made it clear. Love was weakness. She was taken away, married off to another man of higher rank, and I was reminded that a samurai's heart belongs only to his master. I told myself I accepted it, but in truth, something in me died with her departure. I never saw her again, though sometimes in dreams I still hear her laughter echoing faintly, mocking the emptiness I became. Even my comrades, those who fought beside me, those I called brothers, were not spared the cruelty of this path. Some died in glory, cut down on battlefields drenched in rain and blood. Others met quieter ends, executed for failure or disgraced, and forced to wander as ronin, until hunger finished what steel did not. I drank with them, laughed with them, buried them, and each time a part of me was buried too. There are nights I hear their voices in my sleep, not calling for vengeance, but asking me why I survived when they did not. In truth, survival was not mercy. Survival was its own punishment. To live on when everything you cared for has been stripped away is a cruelty worse than death. I carried the weight of honor like a millstone around my neck, and with every passing year, it dragged me further into silence. People speak of Bushido as though it is noble, pure, divine. But I have lived it, and I tell you now, Bushido does not preserve life. It devours it. It takes fathers from sons, mothers from children, lovers from each other. It takes laughter, softness, tenderness, and leaves only obedience and steel. And so, here I am, old, broken, hollow. The boy I once was is long gone. My family is dust. My loves forgotten by the world. My comrades' names carved into stones that no one visits. And still, the sword rests by my side, a reminder that my life was never truly mine. I was born into duty. I lived for duty, and now I will die for duty. That is the legacy of a samurai. Not honor, not glory, not peace. Only a slow, unrelenting erosion of the soul, until nothing remains but a shadow. Yet even as I feel the darkness closing in, a part of me whispers that perhaps this confession, these words carried on the breath of my final nights, might free me. Not from the sins, for they are carved too deep, but from the silence. All my life I was told to remain silent, to endure without complaint, to obey without question. But now, with death near, I will speak. I will tell the truth, even if no one listens. The life of a samurai is not a path of light. It is a descent into darkness disguised as honor. Tomorrow, or the day after, I will take the blade one last time. My lord is long gone, my clan dissolved, but the code still whispers. A samurai chooses his death. Perhaps seppuku awaits me, the final act in a theater I never auditioned for. Perhaps I will simply let the sickness take me in my sleep. Either way, the end is near, and when it comes, I pray the faces of those I loved will greet me, not the ghosts of those I killed, but I fear it will be the other way. The candle flickers in the dim chamber, its flame bending with each draft of night air that creeps through the paper walls. My hands, though weathered and trembling, are steady enough as I prepare the final ritual. Before me lies the white cloth, folded neatly, the short blade gleaming in the faint light. It has been sharpened, polished, though it will not need to shine for long. Tomorrow my name will be forgotten, my ashes scattered, But tonight, I am still a samurai. All my life I have been told that seppuku is not an end of despair, but an act of courage, a cleansing of shame, a return of one's spirit to purity. Yet in my heart, I know it is none of these things. It is a performance, another mask, placed upon the face of suffering. Still, I will not flee from it. To do so would mean I endured decades of silence, obedience, and sacrifice for nothing. I cannot spit upon the path I have already bled across, and so I sit, silent, waiting for the dawn, with the steel that will open my body like a book too long left unread. As I gaze into the flame, I see the lives I lost. My father's stern eyes, my mother's gentle hands, the woman whose laughter still echoes in the hollow chambers of my chest, the comrades who raised their cups with me before they fell in the mud of battlefields. They are all here now, shadows painted by memory, lingering just beyond the light. Perhaps they wait for me. Perhaps they will judge me when I arrive. I wonder if they will see honor in my choice, or only the futility of a man who lived by a code written by others. The night grows colder. I sip the final cup of sake, its warmth trickling down my throat like a farewell kiss. I bow toward the small altar, where incense burns faintly, its smoke twisting upward as though trying to escape this world. And then I take the blade in my hands. The steel is colder than death. I kneel upon the white cloth, straighten my back, and let the silence settle. This is the moment every samurai fears, yet also anticipates, the moment that decides whether one's spirit departs with dignity or in disgrace. My breath slows, my lips move, though no one is here to listen. Still, I whisper, "Forgive me for not being stronger. Forgive me for being too strong when I should have been kind." I press the blade to my abdomen. Pain blooms instantly, a fire spreading outward, but I force my hand to move, drawing the cut as tradition demands. My body trembles, my vision blurs, but I do not cry out. A samurai does not scream. Blood stains the cloth beneath me, dark and warm. My strength wanes, and then footsteps. The kaishakunin enters, the one appointed to end my suffering with a swift stroke. He bows, his face hidden behind ritual calm, though I sense the burden in his eyes. For a brief moment, our gazes meet, and I see the truth. He is no different from me. Another man chained to a role, bound to the same code that devours us both. I bow my head. The last thing I hear is the whisper of steel cutting air. Darkness embraces me, but within that darkness I see the boy I once was, barefoot in the dirt, wooden sword in hand, laughing before the weight of the world crushed him. For a heartbeat, I am that boy again, free of duty, free of fear, free of Bushido. And then I am gone. The life of a samurai ends not with glory, but with silence. And silence, perhaps, is the only freedom we are ever allowed.